Alright, hello, welcome. My name is Shaina. I'm an astrologer, and today I'm still doing a video about astrology, but it's a little bit different. It's a little bit more personal, okay? Today I'm doing my first ever Q&A on this channel. Most of these questions are still about astrology, but I decided to do it to where the questions start out really vague and basic and astrology related, and then as we go along, I figured we'd get more and more personal. I asked for questions on both my Instagram and on this YouTube community tab page, which I never used the community tab page before, and I was like, oh my god, this thing actually works. So thank you to everybody that asked a question. If I didn't pick your question, the only reason is probably because it was a little bit too specific and wasn't really vague enough to be in a video to where I feel like it's relevant to more than just, one person. At that case, I always say, I'm so sorry, but you're gonna have to get a birth chart if you're asking me about all these synastry aspects and all these multiple personal aspects along this and then that, that's kind of birth chart territory. But these questions, these are vaguer, these are broader. So yeah, speaking of birth chart readings and my full-length readings, here's some advertising. On my website, shainaemily.com, I also have an astrology TikTok and I have a personal Instagram. But yeah, it's a rainy day. It's been like a rainy week. And so I just figured I'd be like, let's do a little hangout video. Let's do a little casual Q&A. Maybe this is a good video to watch at night while you're, settling in, hang out with me. So the first question that I'm going to talk about is probably the most basic of the questions, but I realize that not everybody knows me on here. So I just figured I should answer the question of somebody said, I don't know if you've answered this before, but what was your path in finding astrology? Did you get hooked immediately? And somebody else also asked, how did I start learning astrology? And since those are kind of in the same vein, I'll actually wind up answering both in this one answer. So many of you may already know this. I don't know. I'm assuming most people maybe came from my TikTok or came from Party Trick Astrology. I didn't find astrology until I was 19 years old. I'm 27 now, but it was when I was in at my fake college and I met this girl named Nina who was really into astrology, and basically I found it through that. I got really hooked on it right after she gave me, the only astrology book you'll ever need, which was the first book that I read. I actually have a review of that book up on my book reviews. During this one semester that I had, I didn't really have much work to do. I was really bored. I felt really understimulated. So I just kind of spent all my free time learning astrology. And that is basically how I learned kind of the bulk of the knowledge. And then everything else honestly came from observations. But I definitely did get hooked pretty much immediately. At first I didn't really know anything about astrology. All I knew is that the sun sign thing, astrology was not as relevant as it is now, which I'm very thankful it is. I've really been enjoying that. Most people know there's sun, moon, and rising sign. But yeah, I pretty much completely self-taught. I did not actually get into reading books and learning about astrology that way until 2020, I think, was when I kind of started getting into reading. But I found that for all the beginner knowledge, it's really all online. It's all online, it's all free. You can teach it to yourself pretty easily. Buying one book is kind of the only astrology book you'll ever need is really the only astrology book you'll ever need to learn the basics of how to read a birth chart, okay? But then after a certain point, when you get more advanced and you've been in this for a while, that's when I find that it's harder to find the information and learn more about astrology. Now with TikTok and the rise of astrology, it's not as hard, but still, there's a surface that, I don't think TikTok will ever be able to crack, and that is when you really need to get into books. I actually think when you're a beginner, you don't need to read a bunch of books. You need a book, right? And you need to just look online and watch YouTube videos. There's just a bunch of fucking free content about this. And then when you get more advanced, that's when you have to start reading books about those super individualized, concentrated things that only some other astro geek out there knows about, right? So yeah, I get this question all the time, which, speaking of, this actually kind of goes into the next question, which is, do I recommend any books to start, learning astrology? So obviously that book, yes, but instead of recommending beginner books, because as I mentioned, I just don't think you need to buy a bunch of beginner books. That's what you'll want to do maybe. I didn't care to do that, but I think is what you want to do is buy more intermediate or advanced books. Instead of recommending beginner books, I actually want to recommend some more intermediate, advanced books. And my 3 favorites that I've read so far in my life is, and this is not in the order, these are just my 3 favorites. The first one is An Encyclopedia of Psychological Astrology by CEO Carter. My boyfriend actually just wound up finding this book for me, and it's awesome. Again, I have a full book review on what that is. And also, this book that I recently read is Planetary Cycles by Betty Lundstedt. I do not have a review up on this, but it's a great book. It really just breaks down everybody's life cycle through astrology. Like why we go through the crises that we as collectives go through at certain ages. It answers all those questions. No matter what age you are, this is so good to read. It's written by somebody of middle age and after many Saturn returns and all that stuff, so they have a lot more information, and sometimes it can feel a little weird reading it as somebody younger, but now I feel a lot more prepared for life. And it is really freaky how we're all kind of destined to go through kind of the same things at the same time, and like those phrases like midlife crisis exist for a reason, right? The third book that I'm going to talk about, I do not have physically. I read it for free on Kindle. I don't think it's for free now, so sucks to suck, but I would really recommend it, and it's Relationships and How to Survive Them by Liz Greene. It's basically like an astrology seminar that she had that is, you know, dictated into a book format, but the way that she speaks is that kind of astrology language that I'm really hoping more people can kind of understand and talk through, if that makes sense, where the whole time she's not just talking astrology, astrology, astrology. Her books are really incorporating it into like your daily language and your daily life, and I feel like that is a very modern look at astrology. However, I do have my criticisms of Liz Greene. Okay, but I won't spoil it. I actually will get to that at a later question. Okay, the next question somebody asked is, do I like being a Capricorn moon? And then they said the worst placement known to man. I don't know if you're like thinking that's gonna hurt my feelings, but I'm a Capricorn moon. That's not gonna hurt my feelings. If anything, that just gave us a big like, oh yeah, you think we're the worst placement known to man. Oh yeah, go ahead and hate us. Like, I feel like we like that stuff. Or maybe you are just a Capricorn moon and you are just like wallowing in your misery and you hate it. But honestly, yes. Yeah, I like being a Capricorn moon, and anybody that knows me in real life knows that I love Capricorn moons. I really enjoy it. My mom is Capricorn moon. She's awesome. I feel like the best way I can describe why I like Capricorn moons is describing what I liked about her and why I appreciated her as a mother. Yeah, at least one of the pieces of the puzzle, which is the Capricorn moon. I just felt like the consequences fit the actions, and I felt like she was very rational, which I feel like is almost what you never say about your mother or a parent. You never feel that way about them, okay? Right? You're like, I love them even though I think they're irrational and the punishment never fit the crime, okay? No, I always was like, yeah, my mom probably should have been upset with me, or yeah, I kind of deserve that, or wow, I thought she was gonna be mad at me, but she really understood my situation, da-da-da, like, right? And I think a lot of that, yes, she's a Libra rising, but I think a lot of that also came from the rationality and like kind of like level-headedness of having a Capricorn moon. Now, obviously, yes, there are downsides to it, of course, but there are downsides to every placement in astrology. And I think now the way that I decide if I like or prefer, I guess, a placement is like, okay, where do the scales lie? And with me with Capricorn moon, the scales really lie, like the positives in my head really outweigh the negatives in my head of Capricorn moons and being a Capricorn moon. Like, yes, we don't have the best emotional management, and yes, there is a lot of hardship and a lot of like having to learn everything the hard way and having to go through everything the hard way. But I guess I just know no other way. So it just is what it is, what it is. But I definitely don't think it's the worst placement known to man. Next question is, do I have a favorite Rider-Waite-Smith tarot card? And obviously it changes. I go through phases, you know, we ebb and we flow as we do. But I would say right now, or at least what's been consistent for the past maybe year and a half, the tarot card that I've been feeling the most is, or the card that I like the most or whatever, is the Star, just because who would not want to be her? Right? Who would not want to live this life? Doesn't she look so peaceful, so happy, so zen? Doesn't she seem so balanced? She's got a bunch of stars shining. Oh my God, like, what problems does she have? Basic day-to-day, you know, be who you are and get through the day and support the people that you love. That sounds like... That sounds like her problems. That sounds like her to-do list, you know? Get some water and water the grass with it for some reason, right? I don't know. This is one of my birth cards as well. I'm a life path 8, so this is a card that I'm obviously connected to and biased for, I guess for that reason, but I just genuinely really like it. She just feels really free, really happy. It just feels very simple. And I feel like that's why sometimes maybe people have trouble interpreting it, but it's just like that peaceful, simple serenity that comes after like just going through hell that is the cards before her. Next question is, are Libras compatible with Cancers? Now this is a little bit of a, I'm less gonna answer this question directly and more going to comment on this question, right? So there's not really an answer. Now you could say, is Libra compatible with Capricorn? And I can give you my textbook answer, which is no. Okay, and if you want to know more about why that is, I have a whole video about aspects, and that'll explain actually why that is. It's because these two planets square. Technically, they form a square in astrology. However, the long answer is maybe, maybe not. And that's because if you know about aspects, then you understand that aspects are really by degree. So no, the textbook answer is these are not compatible energies, but the actual answer is a little bit more complicated, and you have to understand a lot more about degrees and aspects. You really can't ask vague questions like, is this sign compatible with this? Oh, is my sun sign compatible with this person's sun sign? Because there is obviously so much more to astrology. Now, if you're here with me on this channel, you probably already know that. But yes, there is an answer to say what signs are technically compatible with which signs, but that's not always the answer, because by degrees, you could have a Libra placement and a Cancer placement that trine or that sextile, which are positive harmonious aspects that actually can't get along together well. It also depends on, I should say, what house system that you use. Now, I want to do a whole video as to why I use the Placidus system, because I get this question a lot, what house system I use. But yes, I'm a Placidus tropical astrologer. That means I use interceptions, that means I use out of sign aspects, and that means that Libra can be compatible with Cancer, even though innately it is not. And also you have to think about the fact that maybe you have a Libra sun and they have a Cancer sun, right? And those are incompatible, they square. But yet you have every other energy in your guys' chart that is like really harmonious and really compatible and doing really well. And the only friction that you guys really have is this sun square sun, right? This is going into synastry. Then I would say you guys are compatible, yeah? So you will never get the answer you want, because the answer that you really want when you're asking is blank compatible with blank is my boyfriend or girlfriend or partner right for me? Right? And the only way that that could really be answered is obviously by you, but also, if you want to get technical, a synastry reading. You need a whole ass synastry reading, okay? We need birth times, we need dates, we need places, okay? We need analysis up in here, right? It's never going to be answered with a, is this sign compatible with this sign? Because who knows, right? There's so much more to work out. Okay, next question. Have I read Liz Greene or Dave Rudhyar's books on astrology? So obviously I have read Liz Greene. I have read, I'm trying to remember, I've read 4 or 5 of her books. I've read Relationships and How to Survive Them. You know what, I'm just gonna put up the titles of the books that I've read. However, I did decide to kind of stop and slow down on reading her books, because I was reading one called Psychopathy, like the dark soul of the horoscope or something like that. And honestly, I found a lot of mistakes in the birth times. I found a few people's birth times that she was using as examples as incorrect. I also found some that were just like really inaccurate and insanely unreliable. And for her to use them as such a definitive like birth time and as such a big and heavy example and analyze it so much when using a like D rating for a birth time is a lot. And yes, we all, you know, make some mistakes every now and then. And so I gave it to her, but after she kept on repetitively making this mistake in that book, I just felt like I couldn't read anymore. Like I just was wondering, if this is invalid, how much more of the information that I've read or that she said is also invalid. And also what bothered me about that book in particular is that I felt like when she was describing what a psychopath is and what psychopathy is, she had a really strong and solid understanding of it, and it really helped me understand it myself. However, when she used the examples, like the example people that are obvious psychopaths, I just felt like not all of them, some of them, yes, were obvious psychopaths, but I felt like not all of them were. I felt like not all of them aligned with what she had said a psychopath is, and she had some sort of weird angle or some sort of weird political angle going on, and it just made me feel really uncomfortable, and that also made me stop reading. So I've kind of stepped back from Liz Greene because of that. However, I did just get the free audiobook, which is like her most famous book of Saturn, because that's one that I have not read, because all the books that I've read have just been free on Kindle Unlimited. So I'll be listening to it probably this week. I've never listened to an audiobook before, so we'll see. Now, Dane Rudhyar's. I've never heard of him. I looked him up. and it seems like his main book is like Astrology of the Personality, and maybe I should read it because he talks about free will astrology. I personally, where I'm at my practice as of right now, do not believe that we have free will or that it is even like a possible concept. And that's very different to how I used to feel. I used to very, very much be like, everything happens for no reason. The only thing that we have is free will. That is the only certainty we have. I don't believe in anything outside of that, very Capricorn. But as I've gotten older, I've been like proved time and time again that I don't know how all this stuff can exist and all this stuff can be so true and proven right, at least in my life, and then say that we still have free will. I don't think that. I don't know. So I'm willing to have my brain and my mind changed. My mind has already been changed in my life before about it, so it can definitely be changed again. And so maybe his book would do that, because normally it's in books that like astrologers will be like, oh, even though I say all of this, we totally have free will. Yeah, there's totally choices and options, and like it's not already decided. I don't know. It's so goofy. I feel like they're just lying to you to make astrology seem more approachable and less scary. And they're probably also lying to themselves to make astrology be more approachable and less scary for them, so they can sleep at night. But I sleep fine no matter what, so I'm just trying to find the truth, you know. Okay, next question is, somebody said, what is the best placement for Sagittarius? Now this is obviously totally opinion, so I decided to do my favorite and least favorite placement that I see in a birth chart in Sagittarius. I'm assuming they know that like I'm a big fan of Sagittarius energy or something, and they want me to say their placement, but I mean, I'm gonna say my placement, which is Venus in Sagittarius. It's the best placement for Sagittarius, of course. Also, Sagittarius sun is another great one too. If I could, you know, reincarnate and choose my sun sign, I would choose Sagittarius. I would definitely keep Capricorn moon though. Now, worst placement, there's only one placement, and I'm sure you're surprised to hear this, that there's even a placement that I don't really like that much. With Sagittarius. It's not like what I would even say is like a red flag. I don't think it's like the most horrible placement by any means, but it is like a beige flag. Yeah, like that's the word, which is Mercury in Sagittarius. And that is just because I just really can't trust what these people say. And so if they're really funny and there's a lot of really good attributes and they can be really smart and really have great conversations, but you really have to just know that their stories are all exaggerated. Maybe they happen, but they're all exaggerated. They're really inflating everything they say. And there's just a lot of like salesperson, you know, used car salesman energy in a bad way with this placement, just with Mercury and Sagittarius. They're not the most dishonest people. They're not like totally Gemini rising gonna pull one over on you. No, I'm just kidding. They just have a lot of empty promises. They have good intentions, but empty promises, you know? Next question is, what are some fame indicators in astrology? You know, social media following, influencer natal placements. Okay, so that is definitely all seen through the 9th and the 11th house. That is literally the purpose of those houses. The 9th house is the things that you believe in, the things that you stand up for, what you want to dedicate your life to. Also, you know, travel. We all love a travel influencer. Now, the 10th house is how you're seen publicly on a public sphere. And then the 11th house is a big one. 11th house especially has to do with a social media fame and influencer energy. 11th house, because this is the house of the influencer. Okay, this is the house, the Aquarius house of, okay, yes, 10th house is how I'm seen on a public scale, but how do I relate to my audience? What does my audience feel about me? How do I create a fan base? How successful is my fan base? What is my interaction like? How influenceable am I, right? I mean, also a lot of times people with 11th house are people that are like nepotism babies or come from a lot of power and fame, which has a lot to do with the 11th house. It's all in the 11th house, okay, and what you have in there. Now, will I say if you have a bunch of planets in the 11th house natally, will you just be able to like rack it up a social media following? Maybe you'll have better luck with it than most people. Have you tried? Have you really tried? Because if you did try and you had that one, you know, little thing, maybe you could. Now, maybe it would just be like a niche community, but you'd be surprised at what you could build. So now we're getting into a little bit more of the personal questions. So hardest transit, in my opinion, please. Oh, they said please. Okay, honestly, it's going to have to do with Saturn, obviously. Now, I only wanted to pick transits that I've personally been through because I feel like I could only, you know, pick something as my hardest transit if I've actually experienced it and like can, you know, validify that basically. So I have a few answers. So first off, the hardest Saturn transits that I've dealt with, and it's a tie for different reasons, is Saturn in the 6th. Saturn in the 6th sucked. And it's very easy to explain why, and that's just because when you go through Saturn in the 6th house, your health just deteriorates, or at least mine did. Like mine really, really did. It really affected my health. It affected my everyday. It affected my physical health, which affected my mental health. I don't need to go into it, but it just sucked. I remember spending a lot of money on medical stuff. I was luckily at that time able to pay for some alternative medicine stuff, and that's the only thing that helped me out. But if you're not able to pay for medical treatment or stuff at all, and you're going through a Saturn in your 6th house, that's even scarier. Not to like freak you out, but fuck it, I'll like say it. Like, I'll be honest. Your health is just gonna suck during this time, and you have to be prepared, and you have to be ready to change up how you eat, how you exercise, how you do your daily life, and any like issues that you've had lurking in the closet about your health or body image, they're gonna come out. They just are. You're gonna have to deal with them. Saturn in the 6th house, I don't want to go through because it's so just like surface level, right? It's like I feel like I didn't learn anything from it. I just went through just feeling shitty during fun times for no reason. So I would say Saturn in the 6th sucks the most for me. Also did not like Saturn in the 7th just because it's just hard as like a 7th house person and that always had a bunch of friends and people surrounding me. After Saturn went through the 7th house, it was like I had almost nobody. And then after Saturn went through the 8th house, I really did have nobody and had like 1 or 2 people basically. Now when it was in my 8th house, I was honestly ready and like fine and desensitized to it. It was honestly a lot easier when it was in my 8th house because I was like, take the last few things I hold on to, see if I give a fuck. Okay, you already took it all, right? My mom died when my Saturn was in my 7th house, and there was just a lot of goodbyes from a lot of friends for various reasons. But I felt like it was a much more beneficial time for me personally because I was being much more truthful to myself and who I am, and being a person that only really wants 1 or 2 people around me. So it was good for that way, where Saturn in the 6th house, ew. That's all I can say is ew. Now, this is not a transit, but the hardest progressed placement that I've been through is my progressed Scorpio moon. It just is. It sucked. That's when, as I mentioned, my mom died. Both of those things, 2 things were happening at the same time. I've been having so much trouble recovering since then, if I'm being honest. And I've been doing a lot better recently. I've been a lot happier, but it's still hard. It's still something like all that, even just stuff that happened during my Scorpio moon period is obviously going to be the stuff that sticks with you the longest. And so it's hard. Can it be beneficial? I mean, I guess it's supposed to be. I guess that's like the point of it, but it doesn't usually feel that way. Like Saturn in the 7th house felt more obviously beneficial than the progressed Scorpio moon period, which felt like I guess I have to search really deep in here and find out how it's going to benefit me in some way, how it's not just going to cause nothing but misery in my life. I have to find some glimmer of it. This is a good part of this, or this is a good positive part of what I'm going through, and it's hard. See, we're getting more personal. All right, kind of going into that, really relating to that, you know, with these transits, somebody asked, and I love this person for asking this, this made me laugh, will Pluto and Aquarius be the end for us Cancer risings? I say that for the 8th house, haha. Girl, I didn't even need to finish the second sentence. I already knew you asked it for the 8th house. I already knew this person gets it. Okay, so maybe if you ask me in a little bit, because this will be going through this for give or take 20 years, depending on your chart, which, spoiler alert, I'm going to do a whole video about Pluto and Aquarius, and when that is up, it'll be in the cards, so if you want to watch that, you can. So if you're not a Cancer rising and you're pissed I'm not talking about your rising or whatever it is, or how you even find out what I'm talking about, I'll answer all those questions in that video. It might take some time, but it'll get here, okay? For most Cancer risings, at least, we have Aquarius in our 8th house. My Cancer rising setup in Placidus system is so that my 8th house pretty much holds all of Aquarius. It just happens to be that way. Yours probably isn't. It could potentially be, but I would check to see. As you know, I do not like the natal placement of Pluto in the 8th house. I've had a lot of, you know, things to say about it in the past years, and most of them have been pretty, you know, on the more negative side. This is definitely a red flag placement for me. Now, when you're going through it in a progressed or a transit, it's not your initial nature, but it is really the new experiences that you're having to deal with. And so a lot of it will have to do with how well it's aspected, will have to do with how well you deal with those experiences and what is in your 8th house. Now, yes, I am a little bit scared for it. However, I think I have an idea of hopefully how it'll shape out for me, and how I'm hoping it'll shape out for me is that what it'll really mean is dedication to one person or thing or idea, and all that encompasses that. So that's like basically a lot of vulnerability, I think, is what Pluto in the 8th house is going to mean. However, I'm hoping that'll be very transformative in a positive way. I feel like I've already been dragged through the mud, literally, sometimes quite a bit, living outside in like a muddy town, right? And I'll talk more about what Pluto in the 8th house means for us and what even Pluto in the 7th house meant for us and all that sort of stuff in the video, as I mentioned. I'm really trying to go into this with a positive mindset, and I naturally do feel very positive about it, but I think that's just because I'm feeling positive about my life in general right now. So I'm like, then it must be that this energy is not going to be as terrible as you'd initially think, right? And maybe I'll have a different view of Pluto in the 8th house after I come out of it. Or maybe I'll prove myself right. We'll see. Either way, I win because I'm either right or I get out of it easy. No. So in short, it probably is the end for us Cancer risings, honestly. Next, somebody asked, what planet do you feel the strongest connection to? My answer for this is so boring because it's very obvious. What is my dominant energy? What is my final dispositor but Saturn? And what is my ruling planet but the moon? But those are the two that I feel the most connected to, especially Saturn. I feel the most connected to Saturn and Saturnian things, and trying to especially like break out of that Saturnian nature while keeping some of the better parts of it and not completely losing it. I feel like been a balancing act that I've been trying to kind of like weigh my whole life, which makes sense, like Cancer rising opposite all my Capricorn stuff. So trying to stay responsible while also trying to have some sort of semblance of a life and like emotional experience. Instead of just being stressed all the time, right? But I do really like Saturn. I do really have a big heart for Saturn. I literally have a picture of Saturn eating his kid behind me. I just feel like I have a lot of lessons. I have a lot of things to learn in life. I have Saturn in the 10th house. I've got a Capricorn stellium. I have so many aspects to my Saturn. Everything in my chart goes back to it. It's at the top of my chart, just being very confident about itself and its stake in my life. So yeah, definitely Saturn. Also, you know, nothing comes easy. Everything comes with a little bit of a challenge, but I do actually think that Saturn gives the greatest rewards because it's the only planet that really gives those positive long-term rewards, which is what we're all looking for, but you do have to hold out for it, and it doesn't promise that. I used to think it promised rewards if you held out for it, but you know, sometimes it doesn't. And that's the scary part of it. I mean, I guess I like that. I'm like, it's a little bit living on the edge there, right? Okay, then somebody asked, they said kiss, marry, kill, but I can say fuck, marry, kill. And they said Pluto, Jupiter, and Uranus. Okay, I'm not thinking of this as like Scorpio, Sagittarius, Aquarius, because those would be a completely different answer. I'm thinking about this as like the actual planetary energies, also kind of like what I know about the myth. So because of that, because of what I know about myths, I'm definitely picking to fuck Jupiter. Okay, I feel like killing Jupiter, I don't know if that would even work. And also it's like, I would never want to do that. He's way too much fun. But also I would never want to be married to Jupiter. Like Jupiter's just gonna cheat on me and just do his own thing. Like you can't really I would never even want to marry Jupiter because I don't think he'd want to do that, right? I wouldn't want to force that upon them. So I'd fuck Jupiter. So between Pluto and Uranus, I don't want to marry Pluto. I don't know. As much as, you know, we all can fantasize about the whole Persephone tale, I don't want to marry Pluto, because also having a mom like Ceres seems like a lot, okay? That bitch is a lot. Pluto's a lot. It sounds like you're just going back and forth between a lot. So we're gonna kill Pluto. And then I guess I'll marry Uranus just because I feel like a lot of spontaneity, a lot of weirdness, a lot of new ideas day in and day out. Definitely will be a very detached marriage. I'll be also surprised if I could marry Uranus. Just like how Jupiter probably already has a bunch of like marriages in the past or is already married to people. Uranus probably would never do that. But if I could get Uranus to marry me, it'd probably be pretty serious. Okay, next question. Somebody asked, how did you and your boyfriend meet? So I don't know if I've ever told this story. I don't think I have, but we actually met at this car show, this like old vintage car show called Viva Las Vegas. We met in 2022. I was working it. I was like a little merch girl, right? And he works on cars. He works on bikes. He has a Corvette that he drove there at the time, right? All that sort of stuff. Basically, I was just working and he saw me. He asked for my number. I tried to give him my Instagram, but he did not have a phone. And I was like, he doesn't have a phone. And I was like, that's so hot. I have to give him my phone number. So then he basically had to like find a way to be able to like message me and get internet and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, that's basically how we met. Very kind of traditional in the way that he just came up to me and asked for my phone number, which I'm thankful for because I suck at dating apps. And yeah, basically we just hung out after I got off work and we just kept on wanting to hang out ever since, and it just went from there. I really liked how we met. I'm really glad we met in person. It was really cool. It was like when I first met him, it was like we locked eyes and all that sort of like love at first sight thing. It very much felt true in the way that I was like very taken aback, and was just very much like, you better ask for my number, bitch, okay? All right, so yeah, we're definitely getting more personal. So is there a specific sign or placement that you always attract in your life? If yes, why do you think that is? Yes. Number one, Libra rising. So my mom's Libra rising, and I always have Libra risings around me in my life, whether I want them around me in my life or not. Sometimes I really, really do. Sometimes I want a break, but no matter what, I have Libra risings around me in my life. I think it's just because with the way that my chart is set up, most of my house cusp rulers are set up like that of a Gemini rising. Even though you'd think Cancer rising and Libra rising is incompatible, it's actually a lot more compatible because I have a Pisces midheaven, Virgo 4th house, which is compatible with their Capricorn 4th house. All my Capricorn stuff falls into their 4th house. They have the Cancer midheaven, I have the Cancer rising, right? So it actually winds up being pretty compatible, even though, like I said, this is why you never know. It's Libra Cancer compatible. Most of the time the risings aren't, but I'm actually pretty decently compatible with Libra risings. Obviously our rising signs still square and they're still that, right? Which is why they're going to be around me no matter what. No. But I really, really enjoy this energy at the end of the day because they're the only people that will be as aware of you as you are of them as a 7th house person, and I really appreciate that. And they're just very beautiful. They're very lovely to look at. My boyfriend is a Libra rising. And then the other answer, now this is over. This is done with. This does not happen anymore. But we all know that once upon a time, I very much had a Virgo Mars curse, okay? This is when I was like in my early 20s specifically. I don't know what it was, but it was just like anytime that I would look up somebody's chart that I was like interested in, they would have a fucking Virgo Mars. I remember one time I got fooled, okay? I can't believe that this happened, but it really did. I looked up their fucking birthday wrong. I think I put in the wrong month or something. And I thought that they were a Libra Sun, Scorpio Mars. And I was like, yes, let's do this thing, right? After it was all done and over with, right, I looked back at their chart, we're talking about it or something. And I find out that I was wrong, that they're not a Libra Sun, Scorpio Mars, that they're actually a Leo Sun, Virgo Mars. And I was like, I take it all back. And that is why, people, you cannot depend on the chart because you might get the wrong information, right? Oh, God. Anyways, we're done and way past that now, way past that. Next question. This is actually way off to the side, which I thought was cool that somebody asked about. And they asked, does autism cause you anxiety, like in social situations, for example? So if you did not know, I am autistic. I was diagnosed when I was 21 years old. I used to have a whole channel about my autism, which you also might be from my autism channel, potentially. So now I would say the main thing that autism causes me is not anxiety. Like, yes, it has in the past caused me social anxiety, but I do not have anxiety, right? I get anxious sometimes because of my autism. I can even go through depressive times because of my autism, but I'm definitely not depressed, and I'm definitely don't have an anxiety disorder. However, yes, of course, I would say more than getting social anxiety, I get like social embarrassment, which maybe is the same thing, but I do actually think there is a big difference. I also get really fed up with things very quickly, and I have a very small patience and tolerance for other people, especially as I've been getting older. So when I was younger and forced to be in social situations, I would say, yeah, I was more anxious, but it was more like, oh, I know I'm gonna do something weird because of my autism, and then because of that, I'll get embarrassed or maybe a little bit like anxious next time I have to come and see these people again, right? But it was always like that was the effect. My anxiety is never the cause, and it's never like the big focus point. It's always like the side effect. So I definitely think that I want to do a video updating about autism, and I'll post that on this channel. Nowadays, I will say the way that I handle that is that I don't go out in social situations. I really don't see people. I know sometimes I do have to, of course, but I only talk to people as much as I have to. I only have a friend or two. You know, I pretty much just hang out with my dogs and my boyfriend all day, and that's kind of why I don't really have to deal with much anxiety anymore. Sometimes you just gotta delete that shit that you don't need out of your life. Like, people may think that you need it, but maybe it's just not for you, you know, even if it's something as big as literally social situations. Now, I still like to go out, I still like to have fun, but that's reserved for a few months in summer with my boyfriend. So yeah. All right, second to last question. What's something you wish you could change about life in general? Okay, so first answer is easy. Dogs should live longer. Okay, dogs should live. No, I'm not saying I'm not cruel. I'm not gonna keep dogs around for like 100 years, right? No, this is a lot for us, right, as people. But instead of having them around from like 8 to 15, just a solid like 20 to 25 years. Like if dogs could all pretty much live 20 to 25 years, I think that would just be nicer for everyone involved, because I know I'm very bonded to my dogs, and I think it would just all make everybody a lot happier if they could just be around a little bit longer. We'll throw in cats too. I shouldn't be rude. I know there are a bunch of cat people. Cats can live longer too. Now, the other thing that I would honestly change as well is I think we just need less people. Maybe that's a really controversial thing to say, and I'm not saying, you know, we should just like, you know, go around, you know, a bunch of people, but I'm just saying I think that just maybe if we could just get more education out there on like the importance of having kids, like how important that decision is, and we just place more emphasis on there being more choice on whether or not we should have kids, and like, hey, if you know, if the kid thing isn't for you, that's fine, or like, you know, any women that don't want kids, instead of like shaming them as a society, if we just as a society was like, this is a great idea, like bolstered that up and just kind of like naturally, slowly over time decrease the population, I just think that would be really good on all of us. I think pushing importance on only bringing kids into this life that they're wanted, you know what I mean? You know, having more protection available. It doesn't need to be monitored any more than that. Just trying to make that just more of an emphasis, instead of it being the like American dream of having kids and it's just what you do. It being just a thing that if you want, you have, and if you don't, then that's good too. So yeah, just some sort of population decrease. I wish I could change about that, because there's just too many fucking people, and there's too many stupid fucking people. And I think that's because there's too many of us. We don't know how to handle it. And after a while, it's like, how many combinations of people can we get? How special can we really be at this point? And then kind of going into that, the last question I'll answer today is, what is my prediction for how the world will end? Me. I think I'll end the world. I'm going to get a Staples red "that was easy" button, press it, and just the world's gonna end. That's the point of this channel. That's the goal of this channel. I'm just kidding. Okay, so I have my honest answer, and I have changed my mind about this a lot, because I used to, again, very much be in the sphere of like, we as humans, we're gonna end the world by how rude we are to it. And I do think that we definitely are making the world more decrepit because of what we're doing, and making it more of a miserable place, and just putting out a lot of bad energy because of it out there. But after reading this book called The Continuity of Life, it kind of talks about how things were always here. What always is, always was. And that has made me think about it more, in the fact that, okay, now I'm leaning more towards the sphere that I don't think the world will ever end. Like, I used to think it was going to end by us, and then I thought it was going to end just because, I don't know, I was wanting it to end more than anything else. And now I'm kind of like, what always is ever was. Continuity of life, what's here will always be here. And if this was here, it'll always be here. So now I'm like, maybe it will never end. And that makes me sad. We need some sort of ending and beginning here. But I don't know, like I said, I go back and forth on how I feel about the topic, but that book is a good book to read no matter where you stand. It is very interesting. All right, thank you so much for asking all these questions. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you, I don't know, got something out of my answers, maybe learned a little bit more about astrology, learned a little bit more about me, whatever it is. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I sell full-length birth chart readings on my website, shainaemily.com. I have an astrology TikTok, and I have a personal Instagram. All right, thank you so much for watching. Bye.